Today's date is November 15th, 2005. We are at the Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa, Idaho. Today we are interviewing Willard Bill Clark as part of the Veterans History Project in partnership with the Library of Congress. My name is Judith Menger, and I will be conducting the interview. Also present in the room is Tim Peterson, director and cameraman. Bill, welcome to the Warhawk Museum. Would you please give me your full name, address, and date of birth?
Well, that's a lot to remember. Willard J. Clark. My home address is 1337 Saramar Court, Eagle, Idaho. And
birthday.
Let's see, 83616. My birthday, January 21st, 1927.
And what branch of the service were you in?
Well, to begin with, I was in the Navy. And then I finished up my World War II commitment and went back to school. It was discharged and went back to school, or started college anyway.
And you finished your career as?
And then, when the opportunity presented itself, they started up the pilot training cadet class for the Air Force, which they'd shut off since World War II. And I immediately went down and signed up for the program and got into it. And I thought if it was good enough for my big brother, it's good enough for me.
So your rest of your career was in the Air Force then?
In the Air Force.
Okay. So, Bill, we'd like to start with a little history before your service time. Can you give me some information about where you were born and your family?
I can do that. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a nice place because it's 30 miles from Lake Michigan. Anyway, had excellent educational opportunities. From kindergarten on up, I thought they did a really good job for what they had to work with. I always was very proud of the town until I found out there's places in the other parts of this country where you don't have snow all winter. So anyway, I had a lot of really good friends that I went through and to high school with. And matter of fact, I still communicate with Jerry Johnson, who went in the Navy with me. And we've got together on many occasions.
Do you have brothers or sisters?
Oh yes, I had an older brother and an older sister.
And what did your dad do in Grand Rapids?
Well, he had I'm trying to think, I think a repair garage, I believe, but they advertised battery and tire company. And that's what he did in the 30s. Unfortunately, the better part of my life was kind of estranged from my father because he was not at home a lot. And they got separated and did one of the unusual things for that time, which was they got a divorce. Well, anyway, so in my senior high school, she came over and asked me if it would bother me if, too much. If they got a divorce, I said, no, be fine, because I just hated to bring my friends in there because he might be there and it wasn't anything physical, but a lot of hollering going on. not too pleasant. But anyway, my kids liked my mom and I mean my schoolmates, and so we got along real well for living in a poor part of the world. You know, in the 30s, early 30s, it was kind of tough for a lot of people. We were fortunate that my dad did have a business that it kept us afloat.
So when did you graduate from high school?
1944, 45.
Okay. So you were in middle school then when Pearl Harbor happened?
Yes.
Do you remember anything about that day?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
I was about 12 years old, I think. Somewhere around there. And I think it was Sunday. And my brother came roaring into the house and said, turn on the radio, turn on the radio. That's, of course, all we had. And listen to this. And it was they were reporting the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And everybody was going nuts, trying to swallow that, you know, really kind of brave and stupid and whatever else you want to say. But the loss, the great loss that they had in the event just took your breath away. I mean, for even a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I can't remember how old I was. So,
how did that affect? Did it affect you and your family?
Well, my brother, he'd been trying to get into the Canadian Air Force, which they were taking American kids to go up there, but for some reason or other, they changed the rules, and he couldn't go in there. And he was a real model airplane nut. He was, if ever I saw anybody that would be a natural in an airplane, it would seem to me like he would have been, and he was, because he managed to stay alive and flying the airplane all by himself, and fighters, that's all he did.
So you finished high school.
I finished high school. Well, actually, I had to when I found out that I was going to get drafted on my birthday in January, I figured, well, I'm not going to be able to have this nice leisure spring high school. And so I had to really pack my fall schedule up with a lot of stuff that I really hadn't intended to take. But anyway, it kept me pretty darn busy. But Jerry Johnson and myself decided that we were going to get drafted here very shortly in January when my birthday was. And he said, well, let's pick our service and join it. So that's what we did. And they closed us out and put us into the class of 45. And so we graduated like we were supposed to in the class of 45. And had a lot of reunions since then, amazingly enough.
So what service did you join up?
Oh, the Navy. Yeah, right. I'll never forget it. I figured, well, here'd be a good one to join. I'll have a bed to sleep in if it's on a boat, or if I'm on land somewhere, it'll, you know, probably isn't going to be in a trench somewhere. And the opposite, my planning all went crazy because later after boot camp, and they decided where we were going to go and be in the amphibs, they had us send all of our dress blues home, such as that one, and summer weight ones too, this winter. Everything that had any civilian and issued us all Marine gear. We had everything from a helmet to a gas mask to everything. Oh, a carbine, a 30 caliber carbine, gun, boots, and we marched all over when we were taking the training for amphibs, they marched us all over just like we were in the Marine Corps.
Now this was you and your friend?
Yeah, right. So, but he got changed, and he got to go to a battleship, which I didn't think was such a good deal, but he liked it. And I went on to Okinawa, where I stayed there for about 15 months.
So I've got some pictures here. So when were these taken? I see a picture of 3 fellows.
All right, we went in the Navy on December 10th, about there, in 1944. This was boot camp graduation pictures. I think we have
With the 3 of you.
Yes, we had the picture with Chief Petty Officer Smith. He was in the center there. I don't remember which one it was.
The one where you're standing, the 3 of you?
Yeah, I think there was one guy that had more of a dark suit on as opposed to us.
And then there's one of the 3 of you.
He was the
And you're the one to his left.
I
think that's you. And then there's a picture of you three fellows who went to school together.
Yes,
correct?
Yes, Phil Bukema and Jerry Johnson and Bill Clark.
And you'd been together how long?
Oh well, kindergarten.
And then there's a picture of you with the ship in the back. Okay, but we have your old Navy uniform, and we'd like you to explain the emblem that's on the arm.
Well, I think you're talking about this one right here. This is a amphibious group emblem. This one is where you're in the Navy, you'd be a petty officer, 3rd class, and a motor machinist mate is what that stands for. And you get a crow with it. And when you get to be a 5th class or something like that, that means you've moved up to be a full sergeant, or in this case, petty officer. Chief petty officer, not before you get 3 more of those stripes.
Guys that you went in with, and you got separated, and you headed for
Okinawa. But on the way we stopped off at Hawaii. They wouldn't let us get off the boat. This boat was contracted by the Army, but there was enough room to put our battalion on board with them, and so they worked that out. And we took off from Bainbridge, Washington, I believe it was.
And which ship was this?
The SS Typhoon. And that's all it did on Okinawa for the time I was there.
And so what did you do on Okinawa?
They put us in a motor pool. And we were in a supply base, what they called a supply depot. And what they did was they had this one place along the coast. I don't see one at Okinawa. Well, anyway, in Okinawa, they had a great big huge supply base, and they had these trucks to go down and get crews off all these different ships that were in Buckner Bay, and this is where they kept them kind of anchored there, getting them ready, all of them get their supplies all up, all their broken tires and whatever it happened to be. They'd come in and we'd pick them up on one of our trucks or buses, depending on how big a thing it was. Anyway, then we'd haul them back up to the supply depot, and I'd just drive them around to different sections. And this place had everything from toilet seats to gas tanks for boats, things of that nature. So they had a plenty supply, and we had to just know every place to go and how much we could carry in that truck. And that's what we did.
And that was what you did for the duration
Yes.
of the time. So what did you do after the war was over and they didn't need you in Okinawa?
Well, when they finally got that big bomb blasted off, it made us smile a little bit because we didn't have to go run a boat up on the beach and that sort of thing. Because they expected heavy casualties from the Japanese when you start going to their land. Anyway, so it took 2 bombs to be dropped before they finally decided, well, we meant business. And they ended the war very shortly. They gave up, and then they started packing all of our people off, the ones that got there first, maybe fought for the place. They sent them home first and let them out and discharged them from the service first. So we had to wait around for about 8 months, I think it was, to get our turn, because we were the last ones to go in over there. As a matter of fact, anybody at my age are almost the last of the Mohegans. I'm 78, and I think that's going to be the last one you're going to, I'll probably be that age group of 78 or less, or more. They're saying they're losing them 1,000 a day, I think, which is kind of frightening, but anyway.
So what did you do after you got home?
Okay. I was taking college courses when I was at 8 months. They set up a college program, the Navy did. And so I was taking a course in business administration, and I figured I'm going to have to know how to type, so I took typing, and I got credit for it. So I didn't go in creditless, and they also gave you credit for going through boot camp or being in the Navy, I think, also, so you could get a little head start when you went into college. So I went to Grand Rapids Junior College, which was all patterned after the University of Michigan, and that's where if you were smart, you you went to the University of Michigan. But anyway, I never. I took the first year, and I just had a program come up in Detroit that was going to teach you how to repair TVs. They figured they're going to need that sort of thing because the TV was just in its infancy. So when they were putting colored stuff on their face, to bring out their eyes and things of that nature. So I just thought that would be a marvelous opportunity, and particularly since I wasn't doing all that well. I managed to get enough credit to allow me to go in the Air Force, which they wanted to have 2 years of college, be single. I guess that was about all. Pass the physical. So that's what I got out in 46, went to school until 47. Went to the TV repair, and also it was to educate you into management of the TV after they get into, start filming in the studio. And they give you a background like that. Got credits for that. And then in the meantime, the paper came out, or someone came in and told me, says, well, you want to still go in the Air Force and go to pilot training? He says, well, they're doing it now. And so I got a hold of the closest recruiter I could find and started going with it. And so that was 1947. My class was set up as 49C, and that was to begin on 29th or 30th of September of 48. So that's about what I did.
What did you do after you got
Very
out?
pleased with it. That was, I would say 2/3 of the class were people the same as myself. They never got into the service they wanted to get into. And they all wanted to go in and fly, get some wings, and so we had quite a number of people that were involved in it. I think they started out with 1,240 some people in that class, and they had 700 that got their wings.
And this is where did you go to school, training?
Oh, I went to, my basic training was at San Angelo, Texas. And the name of the field was Goodfellow Air Force Base. They had 4 other bases where this was basic training. This is where you learned how to be an officer. In all the details, like proper etiquette and just all those things that they drum into the academy people, and told you how to stand in a brace, and it was very, very interesting. That was the first 2 months, and then they finally showed us our airplanes. Meanwhile, they were showing us, having classes on engines, what made the airplane fly. I mean, that was always a mystery to me. What it took to get an airplane off the ground. And so they did a lot of things in a very short while, and it was about 8 months that we were in basic training, and that's where we soloed in the airplane. It was a T6 single engine airplane, a nice airplane to train in. They changed their mind. In World War II, they're having you fly about 3 different airplanes before you get to fly a T6. And the T6 was advanced training. It was a pretty hard, well, it had retractable gear on it. No, that's kind of dangerous right there. But they managed to get everyone through, and we didn't have any problems. Amazing. They figured they could just eliminate all those other airplanes that we had to go through and just stick with this one. And I just you had a very strong motivation not to let anything get to you, so you could get through that program. A lot of things could.
Okay.
But I was glad I stuck it out and got to fly and see an awful lot of the world.
Where did you go from there?
I went to Enid, Oklahoma. They didn't have a name for the base center, so it was Enid, Oklahoma. And they flew TB-25s, which was a B-25 converted over, so they could use it as a student's airplane. And so I elected, when I got out of basic, you had a choice. Do you want to go to single engine? Do you want to go to multi-engine? The multi-engine had the B-25, and they had, I think, 2 bases that were training, Barksdale and Enid, Oklahoma. They it was a great airplane, twin engine, and it was a very active airplane in World War II. And the conversion was just perfect for it. It was just a fine airplane to teach people how to fly multi-engine craft. The other schools were Williams Air Force Base in Phoenix, and they taught you how to fly either a F-51, P-51, or what, you know, the old term was P-51, and when they made it a separate branch of the service, the Air Force, they started calling the fighters F. F-51s, and a hot airplane. And my instructor told me, he says, or he told us all his students, he had 5 students, and he says, I'll tell you what, he says, you've gone for 8 months now, and I don't have any doubt in my mind that you could go either place, to single engine or multi-engine. But he says, why take the chance when most of the people that are flunked out are flunked out in single engine aircraft? And he says, go get your chance with the multi-engine, and then after you get your wings and your bars, later on down the road you can request a switch to single engines and just learn a whole new trade.
So how long were you in Enid?
About 4 months. It was about a year total training.
And
yeah.
you got your wings.
Got my wings, got my second lieutenant bar. I got a new Pontiac convertible, Robin's Egg Blue, which was probably one of the biggest points of that.
So then,
the whole thing was just stupendous.
So then what were your orders from there?
Oh, I might say that we were the first class to go through with blue uniforms, and also with our regular officers blue. We had to order those beforehand, and so we were the ones that, the first class that ever went through in blues, which is kind of neat. And then we got our assignments, and the assignment, you wanted to know about that? Mm-hmm. My assignment was Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona, in the middle of the desert. And I got there, and I was in a state of shock. I couldn't believe all this no grass and just sand everywhere that you could see. And I got there in September, so it was still starting to change a little bit, and the weather wasn't too bad. But we came in there, it was 80 second lieutenants went into that base, all pilots. And just these people were all World War II vets. They were flying these B-50 airplanes. And they couldn't believe their eyeballs. First of all, that there was that many second lieutenants all here at once. And so I joined the 63rd Bomb Squadron and flew B-50s, which had it was a B-29 with so many modifications, they couldn't give it the same number. They couldn't call it a B-29, but that's, if you wanted to see an airplane, that's a super B-29. That was it. And it was a brand new one, and had a fine crew, what they called a select crew, and I was the only second lieutenant on there, so I got to order a lot of lunches. And
So
11-man crew.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 3.5 years. And I learned to love that place. I went to college at University of Arizona, which was right down the road, and they had a lot of sorority things there. It was nice. I learned, before I left there, I was going to make my home.
So then where did you go?
It didn't look like I was ever going to get a crew there. And so the Korean War was still on, and they were flying B-29s over there, real B-29s. And they had a transition school at Randolph Air Force Base. And it was 3 months long. And you went in there and they gave you a crew. But then they set you on, you know, your purpose was to learn how to fly the landed airplane and all this sort of thing. The navigators, they went off their separate little way. You had two navigators. One was a radar navigator and the other one was a celestial navigator. Also, one of the radar operator was also the bombardier on it. Then they had 8 other enlisted people that were there as gunners and tail gunner and the bottom gunner, you know, underneath the aircraft, and then you had a engineer. So we had a lot of people on board that airplane. So I went through there for 3 months, almost, and they found out that I had been flying B-50s and I had become a bomb commander, an atomic bomb commander. I went through the school in Albuquerque, and I had a lot of secrets in our heads. So they took us out. Anybody that had that secrecy, they wouldn't allow you to even go over there and get a chance to be shot down and live through it and take you in and rip you one, you know, and told them what they wanted to know. So they just made it a practice as soon as they found it out, and I didn't say a word about it. And they found it out anyway. And I wasn't the only one, there was others as well. And so they sent me to Barksdale to go fly B-29s there, which they still had. And we moved to Barksdale, and one of my first assignments was a TDY to England. And I tried to get out of that, and I was screaming and hollering about it. I said, well, gee, we haven't had a honeymoon yet. And he just couldn't work it out. He couldn't let us go. So anyway, that's where I went to England. I was over there for 6 months. And when I got back, she was pregnant, and I didn't recognize her because I didn't slowly see all this taking place. See, well, anyway, so that's what we did. Our first child was born in Barksdale.
And then so how long were you in Barksdale?
Oh, not very long at all. About a year. I was there about a year. And they were transitioning over to the B-47 for the bombardier people, and for the tanker people, they're going to KC-97s, which were all totally new aircraft. And so I asked for I asked. They said, "You're going to B-47s." Well, the prerequisite for that was you had to go through navigator school, because there's only a 3-man crew on it. And if the navigator got sick or something, why, this was the General LeMay made this a rule that if you wanted this aircraft, everyone to be double qualified. So the aircraft commander had to go a year to navigator school.
So it was back to school.
Yeah. And, well, I guess if that's what you got to do to fly B-47, I guess we better do it. So we had kind of a delightful time going to Waco and Houston, 2 different bases, and got to fly a lot of different airplanes to keep my the DC-3 or C-47, I think they called it. And they had a Martin twin-engine airplane, and and what they did was they put students on there, and they would teach them their airborne duties and how to navigate from one place to the next on board an airplane. So that's what we did on our time off.
So then where did you go?
Then I got a great assignment to Mountain Home Air Force Base. What a thrill. And it sounded really neat. It's not, wow. But the people that had been there before, which wasn't a lot of them, but it didn't have a very good name. They were really beaten down on it. And, Mountain Home, whoa, and it was right. I went out there in 1954, and my wife was staying in Tulsa, Oklahoma to have another child. And so I went up there and cased the place by myself, and they didn't have anything to live in except some brick apartment buildings, and they were all full. And the whole base had all left, and I was sitting there trying to decide whether I should go rent a house in town, take one of these little smaller units that they had, that they just trucked in there, and figured out whether it would cost me, I think, $50 a month to have that, while I went to training in B-47s down in Wichita, Kansas. It was, and my wife was still having this child, and so she met me up there at Wichita, and I decided that I was going to rent one of these things, whether she likes it or not. If it doesn't work out, it's only 3 months, and it's going to be $150, but at least she'll have a place to hang her hat when she gets there. And everything was black tar paper shacks out there. I don't know whether you know Mountain Home very well, but and they didn't have any new housing at all. But we lived in that little house for 1 year, and they gave us a nice unit, a 2-story unit with 4 bedrooms, a brand new house, and that's where they put in a whole bunch of new subdivisions.
So you were in Mountain Home for how long?
7 years.
7 years in Mountain Home.
Loved it.
Okay, then where did
It
you
just
go?
kept getting better all the time.
So then what was your next assignment after that?
Fairchild, B-52s. And they were activating another base in Montana, right up on the High Line, right next to Canada, 16 miles from Canada. It's all real flat land there. It's not what you'd think about as being a really nice place with streams and trees and all this sort of thing. They had, they grew wheat up there and cows and cattle. And they need a lot of sections of land to support that sort of thing up there. It's all just plains. But you know, we got to do an awful lot of things around there, and I liked the assignment, and the B-52 was a nice airplane to fly. It just was a gem to fly. It was a lot more forgiving than the B-47 was. You had the B-47 killed a lot of guys because they just couldn't accept some of the frailties that the thing had, and for the most part, it was a really nice flying airplane. I loved it. That was my favorite airplane.
So when did you get sent to Vietnam?
In Glasgow. Well, I didn't tell you where it was in Montana. Glasgow, Montana. I don't know whether I mentioned that. They had, when they first started flying in 1968, that doesn't sound right. I think that's when I, 1968 is when I went to Glasgow. So we weren't really ready to do anything. I'm thinking it must have been, wait a minute. I left in 1961 to go through transition training in B-52s. So I arrived in Glasgow in 1961. And it was, we didn't really start flying over there until 1965 or something like that. I think that was when they had the first B-52 bombing in Vietnam. So it might have been 1966 or 67 when they outfitted us and trained us to do what we had to do over there. They changed the bomb load, so you had bombs hanging from your wings as well as from the bomb bays.
And you were stationed in Vietnam?
No. We were stationed in Guam for the most part, and we flew D model, which is the largest number of B-52s they had, the D model. And we went over there for 4 months to begin with, and then they changed it over to 3 months that you'd go over there, and then you'd alternate with another crew and go back. But we flew out of Guam, and it was 6 hours to bombs away time.
And we have a map here if you'd like to.
Okay.
Here's your pointer.
Okay. Here's Vietnam, and we mostly did our bombing routines up here, but it was every flight would be different. And Guam is 6 hours to the east of this place, and so we did fly here to Da Nang and to this place right here, which is Khe Sanh. This is the ones that Marines had, and the Vietnamese had completely circled that base and were about ready to get with the general. I can't remember what his name was, but he was a very famous Vietnamese general. And so they set up around the clock bombing around that base where all these North Vietnamese were sitting there. And before it was all over with, it was probably one of the first times that bombers had ran off the enemy. And the Marines all walked away from there, as I understand it. But they, that was one exciting thing. That our bombing was so precision that we could just lay them in there wherever the bad guys were. And that was kind of exciting. Before, my brother was a director. He was a bird colonel, and he was stationed in Thailand somewhere. I think it was up. I just couldn't really tell you where it is. But anyway, he was stationed up there, and he ran the fighter operation. He'd be in touch with them, and if they needed it, coming back from some flight up there in North Vietnam, and if their airplane was shot up or something, or they needed gas, why, he made all the arrangements, and they were done. So anyway, the long story short, he was stationed there, and he got permission to come over and fly, or to see what the big bombers were doing, you know, fighter guy. And so they put him on my airplane. And that was the first time well, and that's not true. We flew in a F-80 once together. I think they had a different name for it because they had tandem seats in it. But that was the first time he ever flew in my airplane and saw what we went through. Before, when you got to your target 6 hours away, why, you'd already been up for about 10 hours getting that airplane ready to go and having briefings, and everybody had their individual briefings and the big one, you know. So we put in a lot of time just getting it off the ground. And then when you knew they had a Russian trawler out there at the end of the runway, counting the airplanes that were going off and marking out what time it was, that made it kind of fun, I guess you'd say. But anyway, what they did was, instead of getting all the information together and send it to Washington for an okay, either the Pentagon, or even if it was a really super close thing, might hurt somebody in Cambodia or something, they had to get a presidential okay. So this was a political war all the way. Well, what looks good and what looks bad, you know? Anyway, Then they would send the message back to here and coordinate it with whatever this trawler was passing along. But what they did, instead of giving us a target to go for, they picked us up, and the ground radar had us bomb specific things. So there was no word being passed. They'd pick us up here at an IP, and they say, okay, well, follow my instructions here, and so they'd direct us right into bombs away. It was a lot better, worked a lot better than.
And then you had a 6-hour flight back.
And then what?
A 6-hour flight back.
6-hour flight back. Yeah, it was a long mission. The best one you could get was the one that we were in Thailand, near the Bay of Siam. I think it was right in here, Utapao. They built that base just for us. Fly B-52s out of there. And that was an hour and a half to bombs away after you got airborne. And you didn't even take a full load of gas. And then you go back down there.
And how long did you do this, your 3 or 4 months in Guam and back?
Probably about 8 times a month. And then I was an instructor pilot, and you had new crews coming in all the time from another station, maybe not even your own station, probably not. And so they had to have an instructor pilot and an instructor navigator to go along fly on their first mission with them. And at the end of it, they'd go on whatever you had to say with their weekend or.
And then you'd go back to.
Most of them were good. And
then
then you went back and flew your own plane.
And then you went back to the States for how long before you get sent back?
Well, it'd be about 5 or 6 months, I think, before you'd get another call to duty.
And how many turns did you do over the years? With 2 years worth or 3 years?
Yeah, I did about 3 years, and I did it right until I retired.
So you retired after?
After Glasgow, I went to upstate New York, which is Griffiths Air Force Base, and just loved it there. I'm a history buff. And you were within, every time you got 3 days off, at least, you could go over the coast and in an hour's time to Boston or Cape Cod, any of these places. You get on those interstates and you just really ripped right over there. And, Gettysburg, all the famous places in and around Virginia. And
so did you retire there?
I retired there.
And
everybody thought I was crazy. Idaho, isn't that where? Aren't you in Canada and Idaho?
So did you come back here to retire?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that was in what year?
1970.
So then what did you decide to do after you'd been spending all this time?
Well, I thought
flying?
I'd try just kind of living on. Are we still hooked up?
Yes.
Tried living on my pay. And I found out very quickly that it wasn't going to happen. So I got in the real estate business, and that's what I do now.
And how many children did you
4.
ultimately have? 4, and they are?
3 girls and a boy.
Do they live in the area?
Yes, they did. They all love Boise. My son is with Horizon Air up in Spokane. I have 2 daughters that live here in town, and my oldest daughter lives in Denver. So I guess that's kind of area.
Grandchildren?
I had 12. Now I got a great grandchild. Couldn't talk my grandson out of not getting married, you know. So and a pretty little girl. And so we're supposed to be seeing her sometime this week, I guess.
So are you still working, or
Yeah.
you're still working?
Yes, not all that hard, but
But you've watched a boom here in town.
oh, gee whiz, I guess. I was in the Strategic Air Command, SAC, for my whole life, and we were on various duties through the Cold War. They trying to get our total number of hours of work week down to 70 hours, which I thought was kind of novel. That meant we were really working. If we weren't working, we were someplace on alert or something of that nature. It came very easy. In real estate, you got to be ready to go out nights, Saturdays and Sundays. That's when you do your thing, and you got to be available. And so I just kind of, it was not hard for me to get used to that idea, because that's exactly what I'd just been doing for all those years.
Well, I normally will ask someone how they feel that their military career influenced the rest of their life, but you just told me that it prepared you for the hours that you were going to have to work in your next career, which was real estate.
Absolutely.
And is there anything else you can think that you brought out of your training or your experiences that you passed on maybe to your children, or changed your life?
The friendship you developed. I just went to a 9th Bomb Wing long weekend down at the Riverside. And they have it all over the place. I can't remember where the next one's supposed to be, but this was just in the last 2 months, about 2 months ago. And it was so much fun seeing these people that you hadn't seen for a whole year. Maybe you didn't go to the last one. But I go to pilot class training, our pilot school, which was 49C. And so we had, we've had them every other year through the 50th anniversary. And we're losing a lot of people, but it's so much fun talking to these guys. And we, speaking of that, why, for not having very many college graduates to speak of, we had an awful lot of general officers in our class, like 15 that I know of, and that's pretty darn good. So anyway, I've enjoyed. I knew Boise was going to be where we lived, because she didn't want to go back to Oklahoma. She didn't leave anything there, just tornadoes and things of that nature, which she is deathly afraid of. And she died on me in '04, January of '04. Had cancer. And big surprise. Anyway, don't want to get the thing all choked up. The kids have a pretty tough time figuring out what they're going to do on their holidays and things, you know. but they're doing pretty well.
Well, before we close, is there anything else that you can think of that you would like to impart to add to this interview, or?
Well, I'd highly recommend the Air Force is a place to go. It's the best thing I ever did.
Well, I'd like to say for all of us, on behalf of a grateful nation, we thank you for your service and for sharing all of your wonderful experiences with us.
Well, I thought I could make it more dramatic, but I don't know how else to do it. It was, I had a co-pilot that flew over there with me, and his name was Wayne W. Wahine Okai. Needless to say, he's from Hawaii, but he went to the University of Idaho. I think he got his. I think he probably got his commission through the ROTC when he went here. I don't know. I can't remember, but he really helped us out a lot with a lot of details. I don't know where he got all the ideas, but he was a pretty smart guy. Anyway, so he was a delight to have on board. He got a missile fired at him somewhere over Hanoi when we were having nonstop bombing up there in Hanoi. They had shot so many missiles in the air, they ran out of them. So it made a lot. But anyway, he had a near hit, near miss or something, and it tore off one of his engines or something like that, and he had to land some. I think it was right in there. And what they did, I don't know whether they scrapped the airplane or did what, but he successfully got his crew and everyone down there. That was good.
Well, we thank you again.
Okay. I just can't think of anything else.
Well, thank you so much again for your service.
Okay.
And for coming in and doing this interview.
Appreciate that.
We now have some photographs that Bill's going to explain to us. This first picture is a picture of an aircraft.
The B-52. And it has a couple missiles on it. This is a B-52G. This is the one I flew up at Griffiths Air Force Base. And if you can see right here, there's two missiles. They're called Hound Dog missiles, and they were used to knock out missile sites prior to your arriving there. They go reaching out in front of the airplane and maybe 20 miles and take out known sites and allow us to go through on our low-level mission. And they had two of them, very effective too. Neat airplane, easy to fly, very forgiving. Another good Boeing product.
And we have a picture of
That's
refueling.
A picture from the tanker going down and showing the B-52 that's taking on a load of fuel. They're even getting it so you could refuel you could refuel it on autopilot. Yeah. That's the sunset as we're going in for a landing, I believe.